My name's Joe Keyport.
And I'm Wes Mullenberg.
And you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. This is a very informal podcast, like most of them are.
Yeah,
but this
more so than usual.
Because we're sitting on a couch, not in a studio.
And we're just going to talk about some of our favorite albums of the year so far, because everyone else, except for Pitchfork, because they suck, is doing that now.
Yes, and
yeah.
I'd rather not leave out most of them to the honorable mention section when we can just do two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that we actually kind of know what we're doing.
Yes, we'll say kind of in heavy.
Yeah, very heavy quotes. Like our entire existence is shrouded in air quotes.
Well, we were recording this on June 30th, so the last day of June, and there has been a ton of releases so far this year.
So many.
I'm assuming that it's usually this many every year, but we've actually are focusing on local exclusively.
Yeah, this is the first summer.
Yeah.
Full summer that we've actually done this, so we have more to talk about.
It's true.
Well, also, this is the first time we've done this, so yeah.
Mm-hmm. You do you want to just start off by talking about the new Clean Tramps EP, since you literally got done interviewing them like 2 hours ago?
I would love to do that. They are a Minneapolis quartet, formerly quintet. Didn't really get into the tea of that, if there was any, when I talked to them literally 2 hours ago. But they just released their first release of a more significant length. It's a 4-track EP called The Nightmare Club, and it's by far the best thing they've done. And I say by far, not because their previous material has been bad, but just because it's such a refreshing thing to hear such a defining statement from them, because otherwise they've had like a bunch of just singles, and this is actually like 4 tracks. It's like a very a good sonic consistency, a little bit more of lyrical consistency. Like a lot of their songs kind of deal in the same themes and topics, but there's a little bit of a concept around this. Not as much. It's not like a prog rock album or anything, but there's like some lyrical nods and like kind of self-references to the title of the EP, The Nightmare Club, and a character named Coraline, who is, I don't remember the exact name of the song, I really should, but it's Coraline and The Nightmare Club. It's literally, that's just the unofficial title track. It's a really great collection of pop, rock, kind of indie influenced, really like it really threads the needle of indie rock in that it kind of just does everything.
Yes.
But not in a way that's like, it's not anything you haven't heard before, but it's just so satisfying, and it's like the riffs for like the musicianship is at its best. The vocal melodies and just the hooks are much more present, because a lot of the songs can kind of get meandering and like get caught up in experimenting or just throwing like a ton of things at the wall and hoping most of them will stick. It's like, no, everything's very deliberate, and it really pays off.
Yes, and I love the fact that it's very cohesive, and they put a lot of thought in programming and producing the EP, because I listened to it while walking my dog and not like paying attention to it, like if it was sitting down on my computer working.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this song is going forever. And then I looked on it, and it was
the EP was done.
And the EP was song 4, and I was like, wow, this is really cool, because I didn't feel bored. I just felt like this has been going on a long time. Yeah,
it's definitely the best we've gotten from the band so far. And they already have started recording new stuff. It'll hopefully be coming out, or they've written new stuff. They haven't recorded it yet, but we'll hopefully get more from them in the rest of the year, and I'm excited for that.
So the first album, or the first release I'm talking about, is the newest EP from the Minneapolis punk band Dirty Junk, and On Your Knees, which was released at the end of January. I think the best song that really sums up the EP and kind of their sound is definitely the title track, On Your Knees. Well, Dirty Junk has come a long way in 2 releases, and they're already working on a 3rd from what I've seen. They're a very politically active, they call themselves a post-punk band on social media, which is...
Genre is meaningless.
I know genre is meaningless, so like, this is kind of a hardcore band. It really doesn't matter. This release was put out through Don't Panic Distro, which is out of Chicago. And this is really kind of their step up or older brother to their first release, Snot, which was throwing everything at the wall. It was blast beats and guitars that didn't stop, and it was short songs. And this one is very much more dynamic and lyrically experimentative, in the sense that they are looking to tell stories more than portray emotions. And I think On Your Knees, the title track itself, is very much as it talks about an abuser getting revenge against, or the abuse victim getting revenge against the abuser. And it's just fun. And it was one of those songs, like I heard it before I knew much about the band, and I was kind of one of those, you got to take a deep breath and kind of put your hands on your knees quick to, like, you've just run a mile.
Take a deep breath, like, whoo, boy, that really ran the gauntlet.
Yeah. And they're really good. It's two members, it's a duo that decided they wanted to play different instruments than the instruments they played before and formed a band because of it.
Punk rock.
Yeah, so check it out. You can, and most of the things we're going to be talking about during this podcast will be things we've either written about or plan on writing about in the future.
For sure. Check out our coverage and check out all these bands on streaming and Bandcamp and whatnot.
Yes.
I'll go, unless you have any more to say.
No, that's it.
All right. I will talk about an album that actually we have both reviewed. You did it for Ear Coffee. I did it for our school paper because I'm the only one that cares about our paper. And that's Why Not's EP.
Yes.
And I say that because the EP is called EP, not because I'm trying to be snarky.
No.
It's also another 4-song EP. And I didn't really connect as much with any of their previous material. Didn't really spend a whole lot of time with it, but it didn't like really catch me and draw me in as much as I might have wanted. Like it's still it's like interesting. Like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is a really cool young band. This is dope. But you don't really like want to go back to it necessarily. At least that was for me. But the new EP really finds the band doing everything I think they've wanted to do at this point. They kind of perfect the sounds and the ideas that they've been working with before. Like lead single Ready for the World is like 5 songs in one. Like it's like kind of like almost like there's like a ska breakdown and like some future la-di-da-di like falsetto vocals, and then there's like a stoner doom breakdown at the end, and like it's got this great like really loud punk like punchy chorus that's kind of gives you almost breathing room, but it's like the breathing room you use to intake air so you can scream.
Yes.
Like scream the lyrics back because it's just a really well done song compositionally. They also got some more lyrical like storytelling. Like one of the songs, "Thud Dead," is about the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire,
which is a horrific thing.
Which is a horrific thing that probably happened because of capitalism.
Yep.
Shout out capitalism. But you don't really expect to hear that from like a high school band or really any band at all, which is what makes the fact that they turn this into such like a weird, catchy, great song all the more kind of incredible. And it's like so cool. Remind me of the last song's name.
Oh, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
I can't either, but it's like 8 minutes long.
And it's
super long. It's really experimental, and they kind of just went to town. They reworked it. I heard in an interview that it sounds like they just kind of like turned the mics on. 8th year, right? They just kind of turned the mics on and just went for it. But it was like something that they actually did a lot of production work, and they went back and redid stuff and pulled all these different disparate threads together to create like a really weird, fascinating sonic fabric. And it's something I hope to hear more from the band, like them really kind of leaning into their more experimental tendencies. But also, I don't want them to lose sight of their more like punk, pop punk, indie rock influences, where they're like the lyrics are more forefront and the melodies are more forefront. And I think this is like a really good taste of what we could see on a future full length, because they've had, I think, 2 albums out before this that are shorter, but they're still like 10 tracks. Like there's a more substantive track list.
And this is where they started working with Caleb from Normal Parents.
Is it?
Yes.
Cool. I should have known that.
And I think that's part of a really cool, probably a big reason why it's maybe a little more focused on not saying the other stuff is focused, but this is why I think this is such a great showcase of their abilities.
Very true. Caleb finds artists that he wants to work with, and he brings out the best and the weirdest parts of them. And I'll talk more about that later when we actually talk about his band and some other stuff he's done production on.
Yeah.
But yeah, Why Not CP is, again, the best thing they've done, in my opinion. And it's such a great visceral album. And if you haven't seen them live, make sure to go see them in the next like couple months while they're still playing these songs for sure before they release anything else.
Yeah.
Because I I'm so excited to hear them live tonight.
Yeah.
Because they're playing the Clean Tramps EP release show. Yeah, it's a really great visceral experimental like noise punk release.
And on that note, I want to talk about the new compilation put out by Double Grave through Forged Artifacts called Ego Death Forever. Forever. And so before Double Grave became Double Grave, they were known as Ego Death, and the name change didn't mean a change in lineup or anything. It was still Bree, Jeremy, and Seth. However, they decided once they wanted to change the name because there was a number of other Ego Deaths in the world, and they're like,
it's a good name, but it's a pretty common one.
It's a pretty common one. And so like, well, let's change it. And with the name change, they also essentially erased their back catalog from public. So if you missed the original run of their releases, you're kind of SOL. But it seems like they wanted to take the best of and put it together to really provide a complete picture of their sound. So they put out Ego Death Forever. Thanks. Yes, and for the most part, you can really hear where their shoegazy, kind of more
fuzz
pop area comes from. But the middle 4 songs are kind of your typical, I shouldn't say typical, but very heavily rely on the sunnier grunge pop side of the music world.
Yeah, it's to use a phrase I used before, it's not something you haven't heard before.
No, it's still really great, and it's really it shows where they came from and why they were where they were when they put out New Year's Daydream, which in 2017, which was their first release as Double Grave, and then Empty Hands, which came out last year around April.
Yeah.
But there are 2 songs that really stand out and don't sound quite like they fit with the original release, with the original, more the older songs on here, and that's the first song and the last song. The first song is Deceiver, which is definitely a slower, colder, much more it's not as forgiving, and it feels very much like New Year's Daydream in the sense that it's a winter song, it's a shoegaze song, it's more spacey. And then there's Sunlight, which is a 3-movement 8-minute epic that is just insane, and it essentially it builds to this point of no return. It kind of reminded me of the Noise Holocaust that I've heard talked about that My Bloody Valentine does during I can't remember which song, but so Sunlight degrades into this very aggressive, very noisy section before it pulls together for this final climactic hurrah, and it's just amazing. I think it's one of my most favorite releases of this year. My favoritist releases of the year. I mean, obviously there's still a whole year to go, and there's a couple more that I'm excited to hear, but definitely go check out. It's, again, you can get the tape through Forged Artifacts, and that's Double Grave's Ego Death Forever.
So I'm going to go in kind of the opposite direction. And the third album I want to talk about is the Happy Children's final, I think third and final album. For sure it's their final, though. Their album Same Diff.
Yeah.
And it is the last recorded instance of the collaborations between Caleb Hinds, Sam from Remo Drive, and the third dude whose name I don't know. Sorry, dude whose name I don't know, if you're listening. We can maybe like dub this over once we look it up and just it's a Fantano bit. Anyways, this is their final album together, and what a way to go out, honestly. I am still just in awe of how insane and just weird it is. Some of it, I think, like the more poppy influences come from Caleb's relationship with Hippocampus and the guys in that. They collaborated on the Baby Boys EP, I think, earlier this year. And their influence really shines through with their sense of like sunny guitar and like pop melodies and that sort of stuff that White Flower Girls really seem to love. Songs like CEO are like he experiments with like auto-tune and all these different vocal effects while still kind of having that acoustic, like keeping the instrumentation very natural, very acoustic, with drum machines, but also like he really he takes the entire spectrum of what you might consider like indie alternative pop and rock and kind of molds it in his own vision, in his own, Caleb does, in his own weird kind of absurd fantasy. And I listened to this album while doing the dishes, and I straight up just had like stop because I was just like so kind of wowed by the way things worked when they like in songs like Playing Autumn Leaves are just such jams, and I was in awe of like how unexpected this was, because I'd heard some of the singles before, and I'd heard the Baby Boys EP, but based off of like their previous releases, like this was not something I would have guessed they would have gone for. But once you really think about Caleb's production work of late and what he tends to bring out of artists that he works with, the experimental side of things makes a lot more sense. And this is like he's taking what he brings to other people and putting it all into his own project, and he's putting all his marbles back in his own basket, and then he's dumping the basket on the floor and laughing because it's just in like a weird absurdist maniacal glee. And it's one of the best albums that I've heard this year, local or otherwise, but definitely one of the. It's given their legacy, you really are doing yourself a disservice if you haven't listened to this album or any of the Happy Children's discography thus far. So check out the Happy Children's latest and final album, Same Diff.
For the second to last record I wanted to talk about, it's the debut record from the Symptones titled Irrational Fears, Overactive Imagination, which was released in March of this year. And if you're not familiar with the Symptones, the best way I like to describe them to people is the fact that they are kind of the up-and-coming local all-American band in the sense that they're very Tom Petty and very Bruce
Heartland.
Yes, Heartland rock. They would sound good on a classic hits radio station. In the highest praise. And that's the best way possible, because they would be a definite upgrade to classic hits radio. But if you haven't listened to the song, the album, it is definitely a different look at the idea of like getting your girl and running away, or like young love, or like kind of pining in the sense of
Get your girl.
Yeah.
Get your girl.
Get your girl. No, in the sense that it looks at more of the irrational side, which the first half of the album, Irrational Fears, in the sense of what if you're not good enough? What if they just up and leave you, or just fall?
The existential dreads that trouble all of us on our worst day.
And I think Rosetta, their single, which they released a music video, they just kind of shot in the spur of the moment after getting super drunk the night before.
Punk rock.
That kind of sums up that album really well, which is the getting in the car and just kind of driving out to the middle of nowhere. They have a brass player, which is kind of fun in the sense of it's not like traditional. It's not like what you'd expect for horns, as in like if you're listening to Chicago and the big horn sections, or even ska music. And this album was produced by Ali Jafar, who is of Another Heaven fame, and plus his Ecstatic Studios, which has put out some of the best heavy local records to date.
Bit of a change of pace for him.
It is,
sonically.
And he was the one who helped do things like one of the songs has a total like punk breakdown with feedback and Beach Boys vocalization, like harmonized vocalizations over the top.
Song, wow.
It's really great. I love the fact that when I interviewed Another Heaven, I was asking Ollie specifically about that. He's like, yeah, I just like turned my guitar on and all of my pedals and it started doing this. And I went, that would go well with this song. It's a great record. You can find it on Bandcamp, Spotify. You can see them around. I highly recommend going and looking at it. It's just one of those. It's a fun summer album. But again, the Symptones, Irrational Fears, Overactive Imagination. A lot of great storytelling, a lot of great songwriting. Instrumentation is fantastic. Check them out.
So my final releases that I'm going to talk about are two singles from two very connected. Well, one's a band, one's a solo artist, and that is Kate Malanofi with her single Glue, and then she also put out a single a little earlier with her primary band Keep for Sheep, and that is Day Without You. For Kate's solo work, she always takes things very slowly, and just kind of, it's a voice out of time, and it's almost every song is just piano and her really mournful, intense, powerful vocals. But with this song Glue, which was produced by Caleb Hins of the Happy Children, she finds a way to take that pretty straightforward balladic or ballad-based format and give it a lot of like subtle changes, a lot of subtle experiments, and a little like some electronic flourishes show up over and throughout the song. And there's parts where you're just kind of like, you think you're hearing something and you are, but it's just kind of like so minor, and it's still not the focus. Like the focus stays on her voice and the lyrics, and that has always been her kind of MO in her solo work, which includes an EP from last year. But she really kind of anchors it with that. Her voice anchors the song while Caleb and her build a kind of sonic world around that. Meanwhile, Keep for Cheap's song is just one of the most pleasant, catchy, kind of indie, lighthearted indie jams of the year. Day Without You is just a charming love song about not wanting to spend a day without your special significant other. And it's really just breezy, catchy, just such a relaxing, nice song. Like with Kate's solo stuff, you might like, I don't know, I can imagine someone crying to that and just really getting caught up in their emotions. But with Day Without You, you want to go like on a picnic with your best friends and like eat like PB&J sandwiches like on a hill under a tree and like look at the sun. Yeah, it's just so fun and pleasant and such a nice change of pace for a lot of the existential dread we're experiencing as members of American society.
For my final release, I really wanted to talk about the newest EP from the band Laska. It's titled In the Blossom of This, and it's a bit of a, I don't know how to describe it. It's a stripped, it's both
like melancholic indie folk.
Yes, it's a bit of a stripped down and very like concentrated look at how the music they've been releasing for the last couple of years. They are working with producer Evan Middlesworth, who happens to be the front of house engineer for The National.
Oh, word?
Yeah.
Dope.
They work with him in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, I believe.
Sick.
Or is it La Crosse? Somewhere in Wisconsin.
It's Wisconsin, unfortunately.
Yes, and they focus a lot on this EP on themselves and the relationships they have, both personal, romantic, and professional. And it's a really interesting, self-reflective look at how these things are handled, whether it's not an unhealthy relationship or a relationship you fall out of touch. It's a different way that I'm used to hearing how that is usually interacted with. Specifically the song Coffee Naps, which is one of my favorite songs of 2019. It's this lo-fi folk song. I shouldn't say lo-fi in the sense of everything's lo-fi. It's like this beautiful piano and acoustic guitar. And then all of the all of the percussion
more low key than lo-fi.
No, and then all of the percussion is done lo-fi.
Okay,
because it's all blown out, super crunchy.
Yeah, crunchy.
Like it's just this really great kind of dichotomy of the two worlds as they blend together to just kind of talk about a relationship that you wanted to be done with, but you're just waiting for them to come back and, to quote them, wreck me again.
Let's just go down the gauntlet really quick. I'll just do all mine that I can think of by scrolling through what I've written about in the last like month or so.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Dom Winterbauer's 2 albums, Crash and Blue Fish. They put out 2 solid albums of kind of dream pop shoegaze, recorded almost everything themselves, and it's super, super cool. The latest album is very good. It's I enjoy it a lot more than Bluefish, if only because it's half as long and the songs are just as good, if not better. And I like being able to consume things in bite-sized chunks. We pretty much shout out everything that Heavy Meadows Records has put out this year, which is like Lunch Duchess, Sass, Amy Hazel. Nice put out and their album or their EP this year that we kind of forgot about.
Yes.
Well,
you reviewed it.
I know, but like we didn't talk about it for this.
Oh yeah.
Nice put out an album this year called an EP called Never Better. It's really, really good. They also just put out a split with Gully Boys, and both those songs are fantastic, and it's super cool. You should check out both. Well, Gully Boys' album from last year, it's great. But also Nice's new EP and the split from both of them.
Yes.
So your turn, bitch.
So some of my honorable mentions include the new internet dating EP called Stall that was put out. If you really like twinkly, acoustic, kind of emo, pop punky music, definitely check that out. Dino Erickson is in a number of other bands that play in that kind of are in that emo vein. That's the newest release from Brace Cove Records, who put out the Nice EP, and then also another EP earlier this year called River Teeth. The band is called River Teeth. The EP is called Aimless Ghost. And if you really love post-hardcore that leans more post than actual hardcore, check it out. It's still aggressive, but there's a lot more jangly, twinkly interludes in between just like boiling nails vocals that are it's aggressive, growly, and just pummeling guitars and drums and bass. You shouted out the new Sass record, Chew Toy, which is just pop grunge goodness. Teenage Moods, the first review I did this year. If you love kind of the more bubblegummy pop punk, I would check that out. It's just it's not too sweet. That it's really fun to just kind of, if you need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, that is the record to do that with. I also wanted to talk about Last Import's debut record, Last Import, that was released earlier this year as well, which they've been just blowing up. They've been, Go 96 has covered
Just
them a
finished a
bunch.
national tour.
Yeah, they're including getting their change box or their cash box stolen, which why would
Yeah.
you steal from bands?
Why would you steal in general, but specifically from bands?
Yeah. Thankfully, their instruments weren't stolen because that's like, you're like, oh, yes, let's just take away someone's ability to work in some place they don't live.
Yeah. Then they're just kind of screwed for the rest of the tour. But fortunately, that did not happen.
No. And the Last Import record is just, again, really great kind of power pop. And then another one was In Lou's new record. The new record, the debut record from In Lou titled Hate Mail. If you really love that Slater Kinney, Riot Girl, L7
Seattle
sound, you'll love this record. The A side definitely bangs much harder than the B side. I was kind of on first listen, I was kind of disappointed, and it kind of tapers off in its tenacity and ferocity as the songs progress. But again, it's really great songwriting. It has a really funny music video that they recorded or they shot with members of Harper's Jar in the Paper House.
where D&D.
Well, they're playing D&D. Yeah.
We love that.
And members of In Lou save this girl from angry nerds.
They're doing the Lord's work.
Yes. And then I think, is that everything?
We're going to talk about the Florists.
The Florist, the new Florist record, which we got to see them live when
Flower Starter, if I'm not wrong.
Yes. I was told offhand by Jeremy, Warden of Double Grave, that they're a band that's doing some of the most interesting stuff in the area, and that album and their live show shows that wholeheartedly.
Their live show was amazing. They made us lie on the ground and visualize like Lisa Kudrow,
giving us
like
stick and poke tattoos on our palms.
Oh, I don't remember. I just remember like she had like laser eyes or something.
Yes.
Either way, that's the type of thing you're in. That's the type of experience you're in for if you go see a Florist show.
It's just, again, it's amazing.
It's insane. It's so good.
But that is it for us in this
That's our
very
mid-year roundup.
in this very relaxed, very just off the rails podcast, because most of them are.